Gucci, Louis, Louis, Gucci, Gucci, Louis, Louis, Gucci, Gucci, Louis, Louis. Gucci, Gucci, Louis, Louis, Gucci, Gucci, Louis, Louis, Gucci, Gucci, Louis, Louis. Fendi, Fendi, Prada, Fendi, Fendi, Prada, Fendi, Fendi, Prada, Gucci, Gucci, Louis, Louis, Gucci, Gucci, Louis, Louis, Gucci, Gucci, Louis, Louis. Fendi, Fendi, Prada, Fendi, Fendi, Prada, Fendi, Fendi, Prada, Gucci, Gucci, Louis, Louis, Fendi, Fendi, Prada. Them basic bitches wear that shit, so I don't even bother. Gucci, Gucci, Louis, Louis, Fendi, Fendi, Prada. Them basic bitches wear that shit, so I don't even bother. I put that on my partner, I put that on my family. Oakland City represent, address me as your majesty. Yeah, you can kiss the ring, but you can never touch the crown. I smoke a million Swisher blunts and I ain't never coming down. Bitch, you ain't no Barbie, I see you work at Arby's. Never too supersize it, hurry up, I'm starving. Gnarly, radical, on the block I'm magical. See me at your college campus, baggy full of Adderalls. Call me if you need a fix, call me if you need a boost. See them other chicken heads, they don't ever leave the coop. I'm in the coupe cruising, I got the stolen plates, serving all the fiends over there by the Golden Gate. Gucci, Gucci, Louis, Louis, Gucci, Gucci, Louis, Louis, Gucci, Gucci, Louis, Louis, Fendi, Fendi, Prada.
paradigm of absolute control. And that's why we're just out here doing simple things, pointing out that we're meant to be in nature and be natural. And this is where we find the source that God made to transcend the New World Order. And that's why they want to try to keep us out of it.
I'm angry. I've had enough of these people. They're a bunch of Christian murderers scum. They're on giant death factories keeping babies alive and selling their body parts. What more do you need to know about these people? I go out and face these scum. They literally crawl out from under rocks. They have green looking skin and they run around screaming, we love Satan, we wanna eat babies. I have them on video. Hillary's in the creepy weird sick stuff, man. She sleeps in the same room with that creepy weird woman whose mother wears a hood over her head. What the hell? That woman number one is ugly. Imagine how bad she smells, man. I'm told her and Obama just stink. Obama and Hillary both smell like sulfur. Literal vampire pot and the goblins are hobbling round coming after us. My spirit gets close to that evil and I feel it go. We're such self-centered crap. We don't even notice hell itself rising up against us. Millions of pointed people of the very worst type, and I'm so pissed. We're gonna stab your daughter at the mall. We're gonna stab your wife, your son. We're gonna stab you with a butcher knife, and then the police chief is gonna say, we love our Somalis, we love our Muslims. Oh, they're so good, oh, they're so sweet.
I was watching Fox News as I worked out this morning.
Whores in this house. There's some whores in this house. There's some whores in this house. There's some whores in this house.
I said certified freak. 7 days a week. Wet ass P word. Make that pullout game weak. Yeah, you effin' with some wet ass P word. Bring a bucket and a mop for this wet ass P word. Give me everything you've got for this wet ass P word. Beat it up, N word, catch a charge. Extra large and extra hard. Put this P word right in your face. Swipe your nose like a credit card. Hop on top, I wanna ride. I do a kegel while it's inside. Spit in my mouth, look in my eyes. This P word is wet, come take a dive. It continues along these lines. And it gets significantly more vulgar. Like, a lot more vulgar.
Why won't any women fuck me? Why won't any bitches suck my dick? Why don't any women love me? They all treat me like a piece of shit. I only shower once a week. I do not floss or brush my teeth. But the problem is women, not me. Why won't any women fuck me? Why won't any bitches suck my dick? Why don't any women love me? They all treat me like a piece of shit. Apparently now it's a sin to say women belong in the kitchen. Well, cooking is for women, not me. I'm too much of a nice guy. I'm the nicest guy around. If I was more of an alpha, then these bitches would let me pound. If you're feeling emotions, well, that must mean that you're a sim. Cause feelings are for women, not me. Why won't any women fuck me? Why won't any bitches suck my dick? Why don't any women love me? They all treat me like a piece of shit. Well, if these girls don't think I'm cool, then I'll just go shoot up a school and prove the problem is women. The problem is women. I said the problem is women, not me. It's okay to have feelings.
Yo, it's another viewer broadcast. Let's go. How's it going, chat? How you doing? Yo, it is Friday. We're getting so close to the weekend. Almost there. And yeah, how you doing? How you doing? It's a beautiful day here in Montreal. Bright blue sky. It's gonna be lovely outside. So I'm super excited for it. I'm here for it. How you doing? We got a good stream set up for you today. We got all sorts of interesting content. Might check out the Dylan Burns documentary if we run out dry. Otherwise, we're looking at the Jon Stewart rant. It's gonna be good. Everybody loves a good Jon Stewart rant, am I right? So that went viral, and we're gonna be checking out HOCUS SCOTUS, man. Supreme Court do be wildin', and we're gonna look at Samuel Alito being a little bitch and complaining. We're gonna look at Clarence Thomas getting clapped. It's gonna be fun. It's gonna be fun. We're watching society sort of enforce a moral code on its justice on these people who are unelected. So I hope you have a lovely day planned out for yourselves. You got anything going on with the weekend? Got any plans? I just got homework, man. I gotta catch up on this on this sickness, you know, like. So yeah. How you doing? So we got some good content. I might play some V Rising later. We gonna blast off. I hope you're doing good. So I think I'm back in the saddle. I think I'm starting to actually feel proper and healthy again. Definitely extremely tired all the time. Just constantly tired. It's crazy. I already believed in afternoon naps, and now I need to take like 2 of them. It's crazy. So I'm back in the saddle, but I'm drowsy as hell. But it's all good. It's all good. We fresh faced. And yeah, I think I might try to do some more music later. Maybe some poetry, and we'll see how much energy I got by the end of this stream. Definitely want to do exit lewd. See if I can pull that off again. Otherwise, yeah, we got ourselves a new follow. So yeah, welcome to the stream, Yuko Samaza. I have no idea what that is. All right. So we gonna get into it. We're gonna start checking out the news. Let's skip to the next track. Yeah. All right. Let's pull on up the first thing I got lined up here. Oh yeah. So this is a fun little study I came across. Somebody who's terminally online, who's like always on the internet. Fake news, everybody. Uh-oh. We gotta watch out for the fake news, because it's destroying. It's an existential threat, apparently. Regardless of whether people believe it or not, influence of fake news is undermining public trust in democratic institutions. She looks like her trust has been undermined. Thoroughly undermined. So yeah, let's dig in a little bit. Online fake news is an existential threat to democracy, not because most people believe bogus content, but because of the corrosive effect it has on trust among citizens and their faith in democratic institutions representing them, according to a new study. Since the UK's Brexit referendum and the election of Donald Trump as US President in 2016, fake news has become a significant source of concern, with most commentators worrying about the uptake of false information by the consumers of fake news. I've definitely consumed fake news. It happens. Yeah, for sure. Surveys among voters also show widespread concern about fake news on social media platforms such as Facebook. But the real danger to democracy lies in people's views that fake news is influential, regardless of whether that belief is true. It lies in people's views that fake news is influential, so just the fact that we believe that fake news has influence? This means that the bogus stories do not even have to be believed by those who read them to have negative effects on democratic institutions. Oh geez, no one's safe. Oh, okay. That's interesting. Instead, the fear that others will believe fake news is already sufficient to cause problematic damage to the democratic process. Whoa, that's interesting. That's odd. That's not fair. Wait a minute. How is that fair? What the hell? So because I'm worried about other people believing fake news, it damages democracy? How does that make sense? Publishing his findings next week in the Journal of Ethics and Social Philosophy, University of Birmingham researcher Dr. Merton Reglitz asserts that online fake news is symptomatic of a larger problem yet to be fully understood, namely the enormous impact of the internet on democratic processes. The real danger lies in the corrosive effect that these online lies have on citizens' trust in their democracy, is the main tagline. Dr. Reglitz commented, quote, "Major democratic institutions such as the UK's House of Commons and the European Commission have correctly identified fake news as a threat to their values and processes. But the real danger lurks in the corrosive effect that these online lies have on citizens' trust in their democracy." Yeah, we just read that. Quote, "Reputable polling evidence shows that fake news leads to a loss of trust of citizens in each other, a major cause of destabilizing democratic processes and undermining the benefits that morally justify democratic institutions. Mutual distrust." Oh no. Hey, good morning. How's it going, Stewart Chief? How you doing? This is a study that went viral, I think yesterday. Fake news poses corrosive existential threat to democracy, and it's not what I thought it would be. It's like just the fact that fake news exists is causing problems, even if you don't believe in it. Even if you're like super literate, like you've got all your critical media literacy skills in check, you can tell a good story from a bad one. Doesn't matter. Mutual distrust. The study highlights multiple surveys covering the United States and European Union, showing widespread concern exists about the prevalence of fake news. Dr. Reglitz argues that the knowledge such lies are circulating and could be accepted by others is sufficient to undermine citizens' trust in each other. Amazing. Oh, it's so hard to wrap my head around. But I get it. It's like saying, like, yo, I can't trust. Like, look at all these people who can vote, and they're all believing in who knows and whatever and flat Earth, and now their voice is just as legitimate as mine. What does that say about the institution that represents me? Okay, I can follow that thread. I've heard that in conversation before. Okay, democracies are based on collective public decision making, giving people. Democracies are based on collective public decision making, giving people an equal say in the process. Every citizen's life is influenced by what others think is morally correct or factually true, because the quality of laws depends on the quality of judgment in those electing lawmakers. Right. Mutual distrust that has grave consequences for democracy, as citizens may come to view laws, processes, or even the democratic system itself as no longer worthy of respect. That's kind of what I just said in layman's terms, as they are seen to be based on the false beliefs and bad choices of a manipulated majority of voters. I've had this exact conversation with a buddy of mine after the Canadian election went the way it did and the West felt all ostracized. I was trying to make the point to him, like, I mean, the Western representatives are taking their people for a ride, man. You guys are voting in bad governments, and you know, of course you don't trust democracy. Like, come on. Quote, as an individual, if my distrust in others' competence and sincerity reaches critical levels, which I'm sure it has at some point, I will stop trusting them to be capable of making joint decisions that fundamentally shape and determine my life, commented Dr. Riglitz. Quote, for example, if many people are misinformed about the risks and benefits of vaccines, they may elect politicians who restrict access to or advocate against vaccinations. My options then become limited, and my health remains under threat from circulating viruses, even though I correctly believe that the benefits of vaccines far outweigh their risks, end quote. The study notes that before internet use became widespread, citizens had a relatively limited range of information sources, such as newspapers and TV stations, creating greater information overlap, more shared experiences, and in turn less reason to worry about the beliefs of others. Interesting. Widespread internet access has changed this situation, as citizens were confronted with vastly increasing sources of information, fewer shared experiences, and the awareness that others might share fewer fundamental beliefs with them. Wild. That was way more interesting than I thought it'd be. I literally ran into someone. I went to go get some Sichuan food, some delicious Sichuan food. I got my mask on, and this lady sitting in the restaurant, I'm like so happy this restaurant finally has dine in. They can start to get some revenue out of this, building instead of just takeout. And her first comment to me is just to look at me like, what do you do with your mask? Take it off. I was so livid. It's just like, lady, I just got COVID. Do you want it? Here, let me give it to you. Like, please, it's right here. Like, I was so annoyed. Just like, we're in year 3. Masks are not a very complicated thing. Please wake up. All right. Let's get on to Hocus SCOTUS. Hocus SCOTUS, everybody. This should be fun. This is wild. So much fun. U.S. Supreme Court Justice Alito mocks foreign critics of abortion ruling. Reuters. Conservative U.S. Supreme... let's see here. Let's get rid of that. Conservative U.S. Supreme Court Justice Samuel Alito has brushed off criticism from prominent figures around the world of last month's blockbuster ruling he authored that overturned Roe v. Wade,
the landmark 1973 abortion rights decision. In his first public remarks since the decision, which has led to various conservative U.S. states imposing abortion bans, Alito dismissed criticism of the ruling, which has come from the likes of Boris Johnson, Emmanuel Macron, and, our Prime Minister, even Justin Trudeau. Amazing. Amazing. In addition, Alito took aim at Britain's Prince Harry, also known as the Duke of Sussex, who referenced the abortion ruling in a speech at the UN last week. Alito's previously unannounced speech was delivered on July 21st. Ooh, is there video of it? Oh, hell yeah. Let's watch this. See if we can find this. Oh, yeah, baby. This should be good. Hey, now. That's not a video. This is a video. Is that him? Man, he looks scruffy. July 28th. Awesome. Don't care about the introduction. Let's just cut to Samuel Alito.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Professor Glendon stole my Hubert Humphrey line, but I would say the same thing. My mother would believe that. Nobody else would, but I'm appreciative anyway. It's a real honor and a pleasure to attend this summit and to have the opportunity to say a few words to you all here tonight about religious liberty. But before I do that,
Already off to a good start. Religious liberty, everybody. We gotta make sure that Christians aren't persecuted.
personal thanks, commendations, and congratulations are in order. First of all, I want to thank Dean Cole for inviting me and for the warm hospitality that has been extended to Martha Ann and me during our visit. I also want to commend Dean Cole for launching the Religious Liberty Initiative. It was truly an inspired decision and is already making a great contribution to the furtherance of this important right. We should also thank the Dean and Stephanie Barkley and everybody else who worked hard to put together this truly impressive program. And we should,
like, as an atheist, it's going to be very painful for me.
thank the all-star cast that they somehow managed to recruit to come here in the maybe the hottest summer that Rome has had for a while, and it gets pretty hot here in Rome almost every summer. And finally, I want to extend my personal congratulations to this year's prize recipients, Professor Stephen Smith and Professor Mary Ann Glendon. They are truly among the leading scholars in this field in the entire world. I have learned much from their work, and I'm sure that many others here today would say the same thing. As this summit makes clear, religious liberty is an international problem, but
what is it?
I think that we Americans can take special pride in our country's contribution to the development of a global consensus, at least on the level of international agreements in support of this fundamental right.
Wait, what? I thought the American government set the standard. One of the big points of America is secular government.
Here in Rome, history is all around us. The hotel in which my wife and I are staying looks out over the Roman Forum. And as a result, I find myself thinking about the proud civilization that was centered here 2 millennia ago. And as I think back, I also think ahead, and I wonder what historians may say centuries from now about the contribution of the United States to world civilization. One thing I hope they will say is that our country, after a lot of fits and starts and ups and downs, eventually showed the world that it is possible to have a stable and successful society in which people of diverse faiths live and work together harmoniously and productively while still retaining their own beliefs. This has been truly an historic accomplishment. But as the remnants of the classical past incessantly tell us here in Rome, no human achievement is ever permanent. And therefore, we can't lightly assume that the religious liberty enjoyed today in the United States, in Europe, and in many other places will always endure. No? Religious liberty is fragile. and religious intolerance and persecution have been recurring features of human history. We can't escape thinking about that here in Rome either. This, after all, is where St. Peter and St. Paul and countless other early Christians were martyred. If we look at the Colosseum today, we see a tourist attraction. We might see men dressed up as gladiators prancing around outside the Colosseum. But in its day, it was a killing place. It was the place where hundreds, who knows how many, Christians were torn apart by wild beasts.
This is a myth. That's a myth. That's a Christian propaganda. The whole lions in the Colosseum thing, like that's a. Oh man, we're like not even a few minutes into this, and he's already. Okay, Lions 8. What was it? Lions 8, Christians, Colosseum, Roman time. I'm pretty sure that's made up. Oh no, okay, maybe not. Let's see here. Myth busting ancient Rome, throwing Christians to the lions. The University of Queensland. Christians to the lions rang without end through all quarters of the city. So writes Henryk Sienkiewicz, I think, in his novel Quo Vadis, 1895. By the end of the 19th century, the image of cowering Christians huddled in the arena, awaiting their deaths as lions prowled towards them, was the defining symbol of Roman religious persecution and the subject of many famous paintings. The 1951 Hollywood version of Quo Vadis, starring Peter Ustinov and Deborah Kerr, enshrined this grisly scenario in popular culture. Today, the prevailing modern conception of the relationship between the Roman state and the Christians is that a number of emperors, including Nero and Marcus Aurelius, were responsible for introducing policies of persecution. We would like to tackle two important questions about the treatment of Christians in the Roman Empire. Was persecution a consistent imperial policy, and what types of punishments were inflicted on Christians? I'm pretty sure this is all made up. Blaming the emperors. The myth of constant persecution largely stems from two works written in the early 4th century AD on the deaths of the persecutors by Lactantius, a Christian professor of Latin, and the church history of Eusebius, a bishop of Caesarea in modern-day Israel. These authors were living in the reign of Constantine, the first Christian emperor, and tasked themselves with charting the history of Christian suffering up to this glorious moment. In both their works, the torture and execution of Christians in preceding centuries is associated with the emperors under whom they occurred. But the reality is that the punishment of Christians in the first 3 centuries AD was largely haphazard and not directed by imperial policy. They made it up. They made it up. It's propaganda. Not just lions. Oh, they were also executed by beheading, which was quick and merciful. And it was a privilege. And then they got the lesser sort, as they were known, were subject to being crucified, burned to death, and attacked by beasts. Oh my god, that's awful. A day-long festival of violence. Woo! For the good of the empire. But okay, yeah, but like basically it mostly comes from their own texts, Christians writing about their own persecution.
To the delight of spectators, citizens of a rich, powerful, and technologically advanced state with little regard for the inherent worth of human life. Near the Colosseum, we can see the place where Nero is said to have used Christians as human torches to light up his garden parties. I think we're all aware of the persecution of the early Christians, but as Pope Francis has reminded us, more Christians are killed for their faith in our time than in the bloody days of the Roman Empire.
Wow.
And of course, Christians have by no means been
statement.
the only victims of religious persecution. Rome reminds us of that as well. On October 16, 1943, German police and soldiers raided the old Jewish ghetto. They rounded up 1,000 Jews and sent them off to Auschwitz, where almost all of them perished. On October 9, 1982, terrorists attacked the Great Synagogue with hand grenades and machine gun fire. If we look around the world today, we see that people of many different faiths face persecution because of religion. When ISIS occupied northern Iraq, thousands of Yazidi men and boys were slaughtered, and thousands of women and girls were raped and forced into marriage with ISIS fighters. In Nigeria, Christians have been under constant attack. In Egypt, numerous Coptic churches have been attacked, and many worshippers have been killed. In India, Hindu and Muslim groups have brutally assaulted each other since independence. And in China, of course, there is the unspeakable treatment of the Uyghurs. These are just a few examples. Pardon me for leaving others out, but I think you get the point. Religious persecution is alive and well in the world, and in many places, it is a violent life and death thing. Religious liberty is under attack in many places because it is dangerous to those who want to hold complete power. It also probably grows out of something dark and deep in the human DNA, a tendency to distrust and dislike people who are not like ourselves. I'm not very well positioned to talk about religious liberty outside the United States, Europe, and other economically advanced countries. But in those places, religious liberty is facing a different challenge, and Professor Glendon has referred to that. This challenge stems from a turn away from religion. Polls show a significant increase in the percentage of the population that rejects religion or thinks it's just not all that important. And this has a very important impact on religious liberty because it is hard to convince people that religious liberty is worth defending if they don't think that religion is a good thing that deserves protection. I'm reminded of an experience I had a number of years ago in a museum in Berlin. One of the exhibits was a rustic wooden cross.
Imagine thinking Christians are persecuted in America. Is this where he's going with it?
An affluent woman, a well-dressed woman, and a young boy were...
Remember the Nazis? That's why we need to protect Christians in America.
Looking at this exhibit, and the young boy turned to the woman, presumably his mother, and said, "Who is that man?" That memory has stuck in my mind as a harbinger of what may lie ahead for our culture. And the problem that looms is not just indifference to religion, it's not just ignorance about religion. There's also
what?
And said, an affluent exhibit was a rustic wooden cross. An affluent woman, a well-dressed woman, and a young boy were looking at this exhibit, and the young boy turned to the woman, presumably his mother, and said, "Who is that man?" That memory has stuck in my mind as a harbinger of what may lie ahead for our...
That's so stupid. Boy doesn't know who Jesus is. This is truly the sign that society is heading to the bad place. Truly. Holy cow.
Culture. And the problem
That's
that looms...
insane. Young lad doesn't recognize Christianity could mean all sorts of things. Like, isn't that the whole point of religious liberty? Is that I'm not up in your bullshit and you ain't up in mine? Like,
is not just indifference to religion. It's not just ignorance.
Young child
about
is
religion.
ignorant. More at
There's also
11.
growing hostility to religion, or at least the traditional religious beliefs that are contrary to the new moral code that is ascendant in some sectors.
Wait, what? The new moral code?
The challenge for those who
that
want to
mean?
protect religious liberty in the United States, Europe, and other similar places is to convince people who are not religious that religious liberty is worth special protection. And that will not be easy to do. As most of you know, I think a dominant view among legal academics is that religion doesn't merit special protection. It doesn't merit special treatment. A liberal society, they say, should be value neutral, and therefore it should treat religion just like any other passionate personal attachment, say rooting for a favorite sports team, pursuing a hobby, or following a popular artist or group. Now, I think we would all agree that in a free society, people should be free to pursue those avocations, but do they really merit the same protection as the exercise of religion? Does support for a sports team, for example, really merit the same protection as religious devotion? In posing that question, I put aside the question of support for the Notre Dame football team, which I understand has a quasi-religious significance. I'm talking about an ordinary sports team, say an NFL team. And in deference to Dean Cole, I am not going to pick on the Pittsburgh Steelers. I'm going to pick on another team, the Green Bay Packers. Any Packers fans here? Well, I don't see any. Well, if you, I'm going to do it anyway. All right, there are lots and lots of law professors here. I'm not a law professor, never have been, but I'm going to pretend I am one right now and pose a hypothetical question. So let's say that a court has a rule that categorically prohibits the wearing of headgear in the courtroom. On a Monday morning, 3 attorneys are scheduled to appear in court. I'm going to give them imaginative names. I'm going to call them attorneys A, B, and C. Attorney A is a cheesehead. Does everybody know what a cheesehead is? It's a rabid Green Bay Packers fan.
Wow.
And they show their devotion to their team by wearing some sort of headgear that looks like a big chunk of Swiss cheese.
Okay.
So Attorney A is a cheesehead.
Cool.
His form of worship on Sunday morning is to bundle up, pack up his tailgating supplies, and head out for Lambeau Field, which for him is sacred ground. For 20 years, he's never missed a home game. He's incurred frostbite. His wife grew tired of his obsession and left him. But nothing will stop him. The walls of his home are adorned with icons. There is an icon of St. Vincent, Lombardy. There is an icon of St. Paul, Hornig, Notre Dame class of 1956, and others. One Monday morning, he is ecstatic about a Packers victory. He can't contain himself, and he insists on wearing a green and gold cap when he appears in court. He feels he's being restrained. He's not wearing the big cheese on his head, but he wants to wear a Packers hat. That's Attorney A. Attorney B is an Orthodox Jewish man who always wears a kippah. Attorney C is a Muslim woman who covers her head in public for religious reasons. If A can't wear his Packers hat, is it still possible to accommodate attorneys B and C? Well, for me, the Constitution of the United States provides a clear answer. Some of my colleagues are not so sure, but for me, the text tells the story. The Constitution protects the free exercise of religion. It does not protect the free exercise of support for the Packers. And for judges like me who cling to the belief that it matters what the Constitution says and what it does not say, that is enough. But is that the only thing that Americans who support religious liberty can say for people who are skeptical? It's the law, and don't ask me why. No. Can we say something more? Well, perhaps we can turn to our Declaration of Independence, which of course proclaims that we are all endowed by our Creator with certain unalienable rights. But that too may not be convincing to someone who is skeptical about whether we really have a Creator. A similar problem exists on the international level. Article 18 of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights boldly proclaims, quote, "Everyone has the freedom, either alone or in community with others and in public or private, to manifest his religion or belief in teaching, practice, worship, and observance." The adoption of the Universal Declaration without dissent was an impressive political achievement, and Americans can take pride for the role we played in bringing that about. The chair of the commission responsible for drafting the Universal Declaration was former First Lady Eleanor Roosevelt. So the Declaration was important, it is important. It paved the way for other multilateral treaties that protect religious freedom, including what became the European Convention on Human Rights and the European Union's Charter of Fundamental Rights.
Right.
So those who respect international law can point to the Charter and other international agreements, but such agreements still don't answer the deeper question why religious liberty should get special protection. After all, they are positive law, and so the same question arises with respect to positive law, whether it is international or national.
Why should religious liberty be protected? Because it's like foundational beliefs, or it's like you don't want to be thought policing. You know, it's like something sacred, and people who sincerely believe. I guess the real problem is what separates a religion from just like any old belief, but it's usually pretty clear. Like there's a whole organization to it, and I guess that's what that thought experiment was with the cheesehead thing.
The process by which the original Declaration was drafted did little to answer that deeper question. The selection of the rights protected by the Declaration was not based on revelation or philosophy or the traditions of any particular people. If the drafters had taken that approach, they would have had a tough time rounding up signatories. Instead, they used a process that was very similar to the one that was used by the American Law Institute when it drafted the various restatements of the law, the restatement of contracts, restatement of torts, etc.
Okay.
And indeed, the ALI's recommendation to the Commission turned out to be quite influential. The reporter for the Commission said that his draft was not based on any particular belief system. He took a more humdrum tack. He surveyed, quote, all the rights mentioned in various national constitutions and in the various suggestions that had been submitted to the Commission, and he selected the rights that appeared most frequently and were most prominently promoted. A short time later, when the Council of Europe drafted what ultimately became the European Convention on Human Rights, it proceeded in a similar fashion. Piggybacking on the work of the UN Commission, the principal draftsman explained that the rights protected represented, quote, the common denominator of our political institutions. And on that basis, the Commission included Article 9, which protects religious liberty and is worded similarly to Article 18 of the Universal Declaration.
Okay.
But this, of course, is still positive law, and positive law can always be changed, and perhaps more important, it has to be interpreted. And any judge who wants to shrink religious liberty will not find it very difficult to do so. No constitution or international agreement provides unqualified protection for religious liberty, nor should it. Suppose a group wanted to revive the worship of Molech and the associated practice of child sacrifice. No society would tolerate that today. So religious liberty must have its limits. And all constitutions and charters and the case law of...
Well, you want to force women to give birth to babies against their will. Like, isn't that crossing that line you just gave as an example? Like...
Various countries impose limits on...
And especially women who might not subscribe to the same religious beliefs. Like, come on.
Religious liberty. Here's an example. The European Convention provides that religious liberty is subject to, quote, such limitations as are prescribed by law and are necessary in a democratic society in the interest of public safety, for the protection of public order, health, or morals, or for the protection of the rights and freedoms of others. What sort of judge could not take language like that? And my point is not to criticize that particular language, but what sort of judge cannot take a limitation like that and shrink religious liberty as much as that judge wants? And if the judge does not highly esteem religious liberty, it can be shrunk all the way down to what people often talk about today, and that is freedom of worship. Freedom of worship means freedom to do these things that you like to do in the privacy of your home, or in your church, or your synagogue, or your mosque, or your temple. But when you step outside into the public square, in the light of day, you had better behave yourself like a good secular citizen. That's the problem that we face.
What?
And
That's the problem? What are you talking about? I'm so confused what the problem is there. Wait, what? Oh, come on, I'm trying to understand.
Way down to what people often talk about today, and that is freedom of worship.
Freedom of worship.
Freedom of worship means
not enough.
Freedom to do these things that you like to do in the privacy of your home,
Cool.
or in your church, or your synagogue, or your mosque, or your temple. But when you step outside into the public square, in the light of day, you had better behave yourself like a good secular citizen.
Wow. That's like, he's got a weirdly bitter tone, this very recalcitrant, like, how dare you force me to not pray on the middle of the football field after we win a game, even though I'm a coach, you know? I think like that's kind of part of the ruling, like one of the rulings, right? Was that football coach was allowed just to start praying after games, and yeah, that's totally normal and fine and okay, even though our public institutions are supposed to be secular so that nobody feels obliged to follow one religion or another. And the way he's framing it is like, how dare they stick us into the closet? Like, what the fuck?
That's the problem that we face.
Wild.
And I think we can see this sort of narrowing, particularly in the area of religious speech, in the jurisprudence of some countries that profess to be dedicated to freedom of speech, freedom of religion, and freedom of conscience. Now, when I was putting these remarks together, I was tempted at this point to provide some examples. I am not a diplomat like Professor Glendon. I would be very bad about it, but it was unusual for me that sort of a diplomatic impulse came upon me, and I said to myself, you're an American judge, and what business is it of yours to criticize decisions that are handed down by foreign courts? I've had a few second thoughts over the last few weeks since I had the honor this term of writing, I think, the only Supreme Court decision in the history of that institution that has been lambasted by a whole string of foreign leaders who felt perfectly fine commenting on American law. One of these was former Prime Minister Boris Johnson, but he paid the price.
Wow, what a thing to say. As if like Boris Johnson stepping down has anything to do with his comments about Roe v. Wade. Wow. That's messed up.
Post hoc ergo propter hoc, right? But others are still in office. President Macron.
These people think the world revolves around their fringe issues. To be honest, yeah, milquetoast. Like I think it's a bit tongue in cheek though. That's what post hoc ergo propter hoc. I think he's kind of like pointing out that his reasoning is facetious. But but everybody laughed. You know, everybody was like hardy har. You know, we showed him, and it's like. That's a red flag when world leaders are condemning your judiciary's legal decisions. That's wild.
But others are still in office. President Macron and Prime Minister Trudeau, I believe, are too. But what really wounded
what you want to come after Trudeau? Like what are you saying? What are you saying here? What the hell is this shit? Stay out of my country's politics. What the? Whoa, you don't like Trudeau talking about you, but you can talk about him? Oh, interesting.
What really wounded me was when the Duke of Sussex addressed the United Nations and seemed to compare the decision whose name may not be spoken with the Russian attack on Ukraine.
Wow.
Well, despite this...
Well, I don't know, man. A lot of women are going to die needlessly. That's kind of what happens in war, right? You know, a bunch of people die needlessly over dumb shit.
I'm not going to talk about cases from other countries. All I am going to say is that ultimately, if we are going to win the battle to protect religious freedom in an increasingly secular society, we will...
You hear the language? Man, and someone was trying to school me about like, you know, beware partisanship and, you know, don't put on team colors and try to resist the us versus them. This is a U.S. Supreme Court justice talking in that language. Like, come on, days are coming. Wild.
Need more than positive law. Think again of the 10-year-old boy I saw in the Berlin Museum. Think of the increasing number of young Americans whose response when asked...
That 10-year-old boy who, when he looked at a cross with Jesus on it, he didn't know who Jesus was. A 10-year-old boy not knowing something. Can you imagine?
To name their religion, say none. Think of those who proclaim that religion is bad. What can we say to such people to convince them that religious liberty is worth protecting?
I don't know, maybe don't change the law of a country based off of religious reasons?
That is the challenge, and it is a challenge that will not be met by federal judges for whom the Constitution should be enough, and it certainly will not be met by people of my generation. So my primary point tonight is to pose that challenge to others.
Yeah, I got caught up too.
Anything like
I was like, that's Alito? He looks different.
Answer, which I certainly don't have. Nevertheless, I'm going to offer a few brief thoughts. The first concerns a lesson that I think we can learn from American history, and that is that religious liberty promotes domestic tranquility. It provides...
Religious liberty promotes domestic tranquility. Okay, that's fair.
It's a way for religiously diverse people to hold together and to flourish. As I said at the outset, I think that the American experience illustrates that well.
Yeah, but the American experiment was about creating a secular space so that it could create that venue for religious liberty. But when the judiciary promotes one religion at the express like devaluation of another, such as Jews and their beliefs around pregnancy, and that a life is a life once it draws breath, not at conception, which isn't even that like hardcore of a Christian belief. They made that up. Like, it's like not even in the Bible or anything. Like, I don't know where they got this shit.
All know, of course, that there has been a lot of
It's insane to dress that up as religious liberty because, like, there's no, like, religious reasoning that got them to that point. It was political reasoning. It was political reasoning to turn the Baptists, religious folk in the Bible Belt into voters by creating a wedge issue around abortion. Like, what the fuck?
Just discrimination against a variety of groups
So
throughout the
frustrating.
history of this country. At his talk at lunch the other day, President Oaks reminded us of the treatment of the members of the Church of Latter-day Saints during the 19th century. He also reminded us of the discrimination that Catholics felt, especially after waves of
Which was a myth. Well, I'll remind you, all propaganda from the 4th century.
poor Catholic immigrants came to this country during the 19th century.
And they were Catholic immigrants. Oh, yeah, okay, all right. Remember Irish, the discrimination against the Catholic Irish.
And of course, anti-Semitism has been a feature, an unfortunate feature of
Like, imagine the insanity of using the Holocaust to justify depriving Jews of their religious liberties. It's wild, and to call it all religious liberty, and to be like, yeah, remember the Holocaust and how, like, Jews were persecuted? Well, that's exactly what's going on. So we're gonna overturn Roe v. Wade, which is based off of Christian religious thinking, and yeah, the Jewish community is super pissed about that because, you know, it goes against their religious freedoms, but, you know, they were persecuted once, so how does that make sense?
American history, and there is prejudice
Wild.
today against members of other religions. But although we live in an era where people tend to dwell on what is bad about American history, I think in the case of religious liberty, if we draw back and we see what we achieved after all of
People tend to dwell on what is bad about American history. I wonder why. Why do people still talk about the failure of Reconstruction? Why do people still talk about how Lincoln got assassinated? Why is there a book called The Next Civil War?
missteps, it is something that we can be proud of. And it's an example, I think, that we can give to the rest of the world.
Bro.
A second point is also something that President Oaks said at lunch the other day, and that is to talk about the enormous charitable work that is done by religious groups and people of faith. He detailed the things that had been done by his church in recent years, and the same is certainly true of the Catholic Church. 2 terms ago,
Yeah, the Catholic Church, the one where the Pope is currently in my country doing an apology tour for its role in residential schools and day schools where indigenous people were stripped of their religious liberties, were absolutely robbed of their cultural and ties of the sacred bond between a grandmother, a parent, and their child, robbing them of their language. Oh yeah, that church, that super great example of a charitable organization. Isn't that the one that's still struggling to deal with the scandal about, like, moving priests around who are diddling kids? Like, come on. People wonder why you have a bad sense, and these folk want to be like, let's just look at the good. Everyone's so hard up on religious institutions, you know. Golly geez, why do we look at history? What's history got to do anything? Why can't we just talk about the charity they're doing right now? Shut the fuck up.
I wrote an opinion in a case called Fulton, which concerned an effort by the city of Philadelphia to expel Catholic social services from the foster care program. And as part of that opinion, I recalled the history of providing help for orphaned and abandoned children. The first orphanage is thought to be one that was founded by St. Basil the Great in the 4th century. The first orphanage in the United States was founded by nuns in New Orleans in 1729, long before governments began to institute programs to care for orphaned and abandoned children, for people who are sick, for the poor, for other people who are in need. Churches were there. They have a long history of doing this. They continue to do it today, and it's something that I think we can remind our fellow citizens who may not be religious
The churches had a very
about.
big interest in kids for a really
Another
long time.
important point that can be made.
I don't think that's the. I don't think that's the. we all now know because of the loss of like the church had such a high position in society. Nobody could have ever asked the questions we ask the church now. Like, why do you keep moving priests around and stuff? Like, I don't think that's the positive note you think it is.
Concerns social reform. Religious liberty has always fostered has often fueled social reform. It's not an accident, I think, that leaders of the movement to abolish slavery, both in Europe and in the United States, were very often men and women of faith. Nor is it an accident that the most prominent leader of the American civil rights movement in the 1960s was the Reverend Martin Luther King, Jr., an ordained minister. By drawing on his faith, Dr. King was able to speak to all Americans.
Don't use why white people. Oh no, white people quoting Martin Luther King Jr. as they deprive people of color of rights is always the worst. It's always the worst sensation. Is it normal for Supreme Court justices to speak at these kinds of politically motivated summits? This seems kind of off to me. Yeah, exactly. Like that's kind of why we're watching this. This is why this is news. Like what is going on? He's at the 2022 Religious Liberty Summit. Now, it's become a growing trend for justices to be going out to events, but it's unusual. And I think like the most unusual in recent history was Amy Coney Barrett giving a talk at like the Mitch McConnell Institute, decrying like how hard everybody's being so mean to the justices and saying they're political while she's like speaking at the Mitch McConnell thing. And Samuel Alito's doing something very similar, like going to the religious liberty. Religious liberty. Christians are persecuted and under attack. And then like you listen to his reasoning and it's dog shit. It's like some of the dumbest stuff you've ever heard. Just like, did somebody actually, is this ironic? Like, what are you saying right now? Did you just use the Holocaust to justify like expanding Christian moral doctrine over everybody else, Christian or no? Like, what are you talking about? That doesn't make any sense at all.
Regardless of race, make a powerful case for equal treatment for all people. If religious liberty...
And just like the opinion that they handed out, look how he's reaching across history. Like, he's not sticking to America. He's just all over the place and making political statements like, oh, Boris Johnson sure got what he deserved, you know? Like, that's wild. That's wild. What are you doing? The entire realm of politics is using words to affect change, to use rhetoric to speak, to change minds, to change policy, to change the direction of societies. And he's complaining about politicians doing that, and he's a bloody justice, and he does it right back. Like, the hypocrisy is insane. Like, oh, so politician got to criticize my judicial reasoning? Well, I'm gonna politic right back. And it's like, that undercuts your judicial reasoning, you knob. Like, don't you see that?
Liberty is protected. Religious leaders and other men and women of faith will be able to speak out on social issues. And people with deep religious convictions may be less likely to succumb to dominating ideologies or trends and more prone to act in accordance with what they see as true and right.
You know how you know all of this is bullshit? Because there's nowhere in American society that an imam is going to take center field after a football game and pray to Allah and put out the rugs and everything, and the prayer mats, I should say, and pray. Like, that's not going to happen. Nowhere in any American city are they going to tolerate an imam leading a prayer to Allah, after a football game. Like, come on. And so his original example of like, what's the difference between the Jew who wears the kippah and the person who goes to the football game wearing the cheese hat or whatever. It's really ironic he's giving that example because of that football decision, of how sports as a religious, social, I don't know, organizing principle, like everybody goes to football like a religion in America, and how that's fusing with Christian nationalism into like this weird smorgasbord. And he's just pretending like this is all okay and this is just all normal. It's like, it's wild. It's wild to me.
Civil society can count on them as engines of reform. And this brings me to a related argument we can make to those who are not themselves religious, and it's a point that has already been brought out this evening, but it deserves emphasis.
Yeah, speak to
and
me,
that
baby.
is the relationship between religious liberty and other rights. Consider the relationship between freedom of religion and freedom of speech. The exercise of religion very often involves speech. A spoken or written prayer, the recitation of scripture, a homily, a religious book or article, these are all forms of speech. They are also forms of religious exercise. If this sort of speech can be suppressed or punished, what is to stop the state from crushing other forms of expression? Or consider the relationship between freedom of speech and freedom of assembly. A religious service in a church, synagogue, mosque, or temple is a form of assembly. If the government can ban those assemblies, will it hesitate to outlaw others? On the other hand, if religious liberty is allowed, it will be harder for the state to restrict other speech and other assemblies. Thus, as a practical matter, religious liberty and other fundamental rights tend to go together.
Yeah, this is like a really bad sign. This is extremely bad. Like, the more you listen to him, the less he makes sense.
And many have seen the rise of limited government, often attributed to liberal ideology, as an outgrowth of the freedom for which the church has always fought. So powerful is
the freedom for which the church has, yes, the church has always been about freedom of thought. Oh yeah, churches are totally big on the opposite of dogma.
religious liberty that it even helped to bring down what once seemed an indomitable totalitarian state. As George Weigel wrote in his biography of St. Pope John Paul II, a regime that honors religious liberty, quote, by definition ceases to be totalitarian. And the life and work of John by definition ceases to be totalitarian. And the life and work of John Paul II dramatically illustrate that point. John Paul II had personal experience with totalitarian regimes and religious oppression. His years in seminary coincided with the Nazi occupation of Poland, and his early priesthood was under the thumb of the Soviets. Throughout those years, he worshipped and ministered at risk to his life and saw friends and fellow priests martyred. But he was undeterred, and he was savvy. As Archbishop of Krakow, he carefully used his authority to resist the state where he could and expand opportunities for religious practice.
Cool.
Later, when he made his first papal visit to his homeland in May 1979, he drew enormous, ecstatic crowds. The Polish government and its Soviet masters could see that here was a force to be reckoned with. And sure enough, the next year, the Solidarity movement with connections to the church brought about the strike at the Gdansk shipyard, which in turn led to the fall of the Polish communist government and contributed to the fall of communist governments throughout what was once known as the Warsaw Pact. As Mikhail Gorbachev admitted, and as historians like Paul Johnson have shown, John Paul II played a big role in the Soviet Empire's demise.
Wow, that is such a weird point to make. If it weren't for religious freedom, we might still be under the thumb of the commies. It's like the 1970s called and they want their arguments back. What the hell is this?
Making these observations about the case that can be made for religious liberty, I must recall another event that occurred here in Rome, and that is the promulgation 57 years ago of the encyclical Dignitatis Humanae, in which the Church boldly proclaimed that no person should be, quote, forced to act in a manner contrary to his own beliefs, whether privately or publicly, whether alone or in association with others, within due limits.
Okay.
As the title of the encyclical reveals, in English it is, of course, on the dignity of the human person. The foundation for this liberty is the dignity that is owed to every single human. When the state signs on to protect religious
Is he
liberty,
a minister or a judge? Neither. He's a justice.
it necessarily signs on to a particular conception of what it means to be human, and that conception entails a respect for a panoply of rights. These are just a few thoughts about what may be said to a skeptical culture about the protection of liberty. And make no mistake about it, unless the people can be convinced that robust religious liberty is worth protecting, it will not endure. I want to quote something that was said by the judge who is the namesake for Professor Glendon's chair. I'm sure you've heard this, but it too is worth repeating. Learned Hand wrote, "Liberty lies in the hearts of men and women. When it dies there, no constitution, no law, no court can do much to help it." I had originally thought that I would end my talk at this point, but it struck me that is a pretty gloomy note, and I don't want to end on a gloomy note. I don't think we should be gloomy about religious liberty. So I'm going to add another reminiscence that goes along with my reminiscence about the 10-year-old boy in Berlin.
Remember, the 10-year-old boy who didn't know who Jesus was, which was the harbinger. He actually used the word harbinger in reference to an ignorant child about probably maybe a religion he didn't follow. Like, what an insane take. It's honestly probably the most shocking part. He keeps coming back to this example like it means anything. Dude, you can have a 20-year-old who's never heard of a certain religion. Like, are you kidding me? That's not persecution. That's just not being popular. What the fuck?
Relates to a trip I took to China in 2016. During my lifetime, the People's Republic of China did its best to eradicate religion completely, and yet it failed, just as the Roman emperors, who spent centuries trying to destroy Christianity, failed. In China, there are now more Christians than there are in France or Germany, and if trends continue, the number of Christians in China may surpass those in the United States.
To be honest, growing up in a religious household, they would be aghast at this kind of thing. It's like a child not learning how to read. They think it's a basic part of a good upbringing to learn about Jesus. Yeah, I get that, but he didn't clarify whether, like, I guess, like, if a child is walking into a church and he doesn't know what Jesus is on the cross, like, that's a big aghast moment. Is that what you're saying? Because I can see how a Christian could convince themselves of that, but it's a kid. It's a kid. They ask dumb questions all the time. Kids are stupid. Like it's kind of part of how they learn. You might have learned it like 4 or 5 times that that's Jesus on the cross, but you're still gonna ask the question. You might get a different answer. You don't make too much hay out of the question of a child unless, like, it's, I don't know, pointing out something, you know, really divine or something. Like, this is insane to consider that to be a harbinger of anything, like, especially of, like, religious persecution. It's just ignorance. Like, they judge the parents of society that created that more. Why wasn't this kid taught about Jesus? The reason I find this so strange to me is because, like, from a Buddhist perspective, there is no good or evil. There is just wisdom and ignorance. And so ignorance is just always kind of around. There's all sorts of it. There's all sorts of ways to be ignorant, and it's not like a big scary moment. It's like, yeah, that's the world. That's kind of what we move through. So for me to kind of take that lens and then think through a Christian perspective, I'm like, guys, what's the problem here? Is that the whole point of bringing a kid to a church, is to make them aware, to give them wisdom over awareness, to teach them parables about being human, about the sacrifice of Jesus? And it's like, if the kid doesn't understand that, yeah, it might take a while. It's complicated. The kids don't have abstract reasoning. Come on. I don't know. Yeah, this is really like making a mountain out of a molehill. You know, tempest in a teacup stuff. Like, oh my goodness.
I know the situation has changed since 2016, but I doubt that this trend can be personally stopped.
Wow.
During a visit, I had a conversation with a Beijing University student that I will never forget.
Okay.
I was engaging in small talk with this young woman, and she told me that she had an older brother. And I passed over this, I didn't make much of it, and she stopped me and she said, I don't think you understand the importance of what I just told you. I have an older brother. She had been born during the time when the People's Republic was strictly enforcing its one-child policy.
Yeah.
Her mother was a physician. Her mother arranged for her to be born outside of a hospital, so there would be no record of her birth.
Jesus.
And after she was born, her parents paid a succession of childless couples to raise her in their home and pretend that she was their daughter.
That's crazy.
Her real parents had only intermittent contact with her during all that time, up to the point where she scored very high on an exam and was admitted to Beijing University. She told me something very important. I found very interesting. She said that she had grown up in a town in China where, for historic reasons, there were a number of churches. And she said that the Catholic Church there was known as the church that gave reasons. That really struck me. The Cultural Revolution did its best to destroy religion, but it was not successful. It was not able to extinguish the religious impulse. Our hearts are restless until we rest in God, and therefore the champions of religious liberty, who go out as wise as serpents and as harmless of doves, can expect to find hearts that are open.
You can't be as wise as a serpent and as harmless. What? That's a contradiction in terms, my guy. I know you're trying to be poetic, but that doesn't make any sense. I mean, I thought, why do we say serpents are wise? It's because they're like some of the most ancient and dangerous species like that humans have faced, right? Like we've always, and they're like close to the earth and, you know, the hidden knowledge that was given to Eve. But harmless as dove is like, what? Snakes kill. Yeah, they're cunning. They're often like dangerous and they constrict. They surprise. That's part of their wisdom, right? Like part of their. It's a dangerous knowledge. It's not necessarily a wisdom. I don't know, man. He's waxing poetic, and I am not impressed.
And as harmless of doves, can expect to find hearts that are open to their message. Thank you very much.
Wow, that was actually way worse than I thought it'd be. That was some dog shit. I'm glad we saw that because the article did not communicate how insane that was. There's a lot of stuff I didn't understand just because it got like really like legalese and not to any good point. But man, what a pedantic, what a pissy speech. I cannot believe this stuff. Talking about the myth of Christians being eaten by lions. Doves aren't harmless. They're peaceful, unless those are the same. Doves have the symbolic, like they're the symbol of peace. If like, let's say there's two sides that are warring. It's like white flags and doves, right? Or like if there's, let's say a war has ended and there's a big ceremony, doves may be released to symbolize peace, to symbolize the purity of the human spirit, the sanctity. Yeah. You don't understand with harmlessness? No, but it kind of makes sense, right? Like he's kind of mucking it up horribly, but that one I don't take much umbrage with. Like doves are harmless. Yeah, okay, they're symbols of peace, but he used that word because serpents cause harm. So I guess he's like, I'm getting myself into a corner here. But all right, let's see what AOC had to say about this. Remember, it was Alito's opinion that leaked. That fact, paired with his politicized remarks below, should be alarming to anyone. The Supreme Court is in a legitimacy crisis. Chief Justice Roberts has a responsibility to share the progress and results of the SCOTUS' leak investigation. Remember that? Remember all the conservatives were like, who leaked this thing? Who leaked this? And then, you know, some digging got done. People were like, maybe it was Ginny Thomas. And now all of a sudden we don't care about this investigation. Funny how that disappeared, eh? But okay, let's rewatch this section just to see what she has emphasized. I'm going to use that opportunity to go to the washroom real quick.
A few weeks since I had the honor this term of writing, I think, the only Supreme Court decision in the history of that institution that has been lambasted by a whole string of foreign leaders who felt perfectly fine commenting on American law. One of these was former Prime Minister Boris Johnson, but he paid the price. Post hoc ergo propter hoc, right? But others are still in office. President Macron and Prime Minister Trudeau, I believe, are too. But what really wounded me was when the Duke of Sussex addressed the United Nations and seemed to compare the decision, whose name may not be spoken, with the Russian attack on Ukraine.
Yeah, that's wild to me. Those are explicitly political statements. He has no business saying that. That is bizarre. And you know there's going to be a bunch of Canadian chuds who are like, Trudeau's got to go. He's been, you know, there's a target on his back now. Okay, everybody. Let's get on to our second segment. Jon Stewart gave a big rant. This is about a bill that I believe failed in the Senate, and it was to like, I think help with soldiers who got sick from like the burn pits that were used in the Afghanistan-Iraq war, where they just burn stuff. They get all this toxic fumes, a bunch of carcinogens. And I think there was supposed to be a bill to like give them healthcare or whatever, and it failed. And here's Jon Stewart pissed off.
So ain't this a bitch? Yeah. Ain't this a bitch?
You tell him.
America's heroes.
Yeah, and Marjorie Taylor Greene, after voting against it, has the gall to blame the Dems for not acting. It's great, right? It's awesome. You punch someone in the face and you say, look what they did. How dare they? Going around punching people in the face?
Fought in our wars. Outside sweating their asses off. With oxygen.
You tell them.
Battling all kinds of ailments, while these motherfuckers sit in the air conditioning, walled off from any of it.
Yep.
They don't have to hear it.
With pay raises.
They don't have to see it. They don't have to understand that these are human beings. Do you get it yet? Do we see that these aren't heroes? These are men and women, mothers and fathers, sisters and brothers, that we just let stand outside in the heat. When they
He's gonna get clipped so hard for that, for saying they're not heroes. That's gonna be the Fox News thing. Jon Stewart thinks veterans are not heroes.
Can't breathe. I'm gonna read you something. This is beautiful. I'm gonna read you something beautiful. You know what? I said a curse word and I'm sorry about that. That was my fault. Let me say something beautiful. This is a tweet from Senator Rick Scott of Florida from yesterday. It's beautiful.
Oh, this is
and I'm
nice.
sorry about the cursing, and let me say something beautiful to make it up to you.
Oh god, this is not gonna be beautiful.
I was honored to join the USO today and make care packages for our brave military members in gratitude.
Aw.
In gratitude
Wow.
of their sacrifice
Wow.
and service
Wow.
to our nation. And there's a beautiful picture. I wish you could see it. He's standing with a little package. Did you get the package? I think it has M&Ms in it and some cookies and some moist towelettes.
Aw.
I don't even know, honestly, I don't even know what to say. I've been coming down here 10, 15 years. I'm used to the hypocrisy. Christina Keene will tell you from VFW. She sat in an office with Mitch McConnell and a war veteran from Kentucky, and he looked that man in the eyes and he said, we'll get it done.
Lies.
And he lied to him.
Yep.
Because Mitch McConnell yesterday flipped. I'm used to the lies. I'm used to the hypocrisy. Senator Pat Toomey won't take a meeting with the veterans groups.
Amazing.
Sends out his chief of staff. I'm used to the cowardice. I've been here a long time. Senate's where accountability goes to die. These people don't care. They're never losing their jobs. They're
True.
never losing their health care. Pat
Yep.
Toomey didn't lose his job. He's walking away. God knows what kind of pot of gold he's stepping into
Wow.
to lobby this government to shit on more people.
Wow. Tell him.
I'm used to all of it, but I am not used to the cruelty.
It's the cruelty.
They passed it. June 16th, they passed the PACT Act. 84 to 14. You don't even see those scores in the Senate anymore. They passed it. Every one of these individuals that has been fighting for years, standing on the shoulders of Vietnam veterans who have been fighting for years, standing on the shoulders of Persian Gulf War veterans fighting for years, Desert Storm veterans, to just get the health care and benefits that they earned from their service. And I don't care if they were fighting for our freedom. I don't care if they were fighting for the flag. I don't care if they were fighting because they wanted to get out of a drug treatment center or it was jail or the army. I don't give a shit. They lived up to their oath.
Let's go.
And yesterday, they spit on it
Wow.
in abject cruelty.
Wow.
These people thought they could finally breathe. You think their struggles end because the PACT Act passes? All it means is they don't have to decide between their cancer drugs and their house.
Yikes.
Their struggle continues.
This bill does a lot more than just give us health care.
Gives them health care, gives them benefits, lets them live.
Keeps veterans from going homeless, keeps veterans from becoming addicts, keeps veterans from committing suicide.
Senator Toomey's not going to hear that because he
Truck,
won't
yeah,
sit
brother.
down with this man.
True.
Because he is a fucking coward.
Wow.
You hear
him
me?
out. Let's go.
A coward. And like I say, I'm used to it. But this type of cruelty on those that we say we hold up as our most valued Americans, then what are we? Pat Toomey stood up there, Patriot Pat Toomey, excuse me, I'm sorry. I want to give him his propers. I want to make sure that I give him his propers.
His propers.
Patriot Pat Toomey stood on the floor and said, this is a slush fund. They're going to use $400 billion to spend on whatever they want. That's nonsense. I call bullshit. This isn't a slush fund. You know what's a slush fund? The OCO, the Overseas Contingency Operations Fund, $60 billion, $70 billion every year on top of $500 billion, $600 billion, $700 billion of a defense budget. That's a slush fund, unaccountable, no guardrails. Did Pat Toomey stand up and say, this is irresponsible, the guardrails? No, not one of them did. They vote for it year after year after year. You don't support the troops, you support the war machine.
Yep.
That's all you care about.
Industry.
Signed the proclamation to send me to war.
Boy, they haven't met a war they won't sign up for, and they haven't met a veteran they won't screw over.
Wow.
What the fuck are we?
Wow.
Barbaric. It's barbaric.
And now they're gonna go away. Pat Toomey says, I've got veterans groups behind me. I call bullshit. These are the veterans groups. VFW, American Legion, IAVA, Wounded Warriors, DAV, AMVETS. They're all here. This is the veterans community, Senator. They don't stand behind you. In fact, you won't let them stand in front of you.
Woo!
Cowards, all of them.
Wow.
Cowards, all of them.
Oh.
And now they say, well, this will get done maybe on the after we get back from our summer recess, maybe during the lame duck, because they're on Senate time. Do you understand? You live around here. Senate time is ridiculous. These motherfuckers live to 200. They're tortoises. They live forever, and they never lose their jobs, and they never lose their benefits, and they never lose all those things. Well, they're not on Senate time. They're on human time, cancer time.
Wow.
Don't you have families? Don't you have people
Tell them.
who are deciding how to live their last moments? I know some of them. They've been down here advocating with us. They spent their remaining time advocating so that other soldiers didn't have to face the indignities and the depravity and the desperation that they faced. And none of them will hear it. And none of them care. Except to tweet. Boy, they'll tweet it. Can't wait to see what they come up with on Veterans Day, on Memorial Day. Well, this is the reality of it.
Wild.
I honestly don't even know what to say anymore, but we need your help because we're not leaving. These people cannot go away. I don't know if you know this. You know, obviously I'm not a military expert. I didn't serve in the military, but from what I understand, you're not allowed to just leave your post when the mission isn't completed. Apparently you take an oath. You swear an oath, and you can't leave. But these folks can leave because they're on Senate time. Go ahead, go home, spend time with your families, because these people can't do it anymore.
Dang.
So they can't leave until this gets done. Because these people will not give up, they will not give in, and they will not relent. This is an embarrassment to the Senate, to the country, to the founders, and all that they profess to hold dear. And if this is America first, then America is fucked.
Thank you. Thank you. Any on-topic questions?
That was wild. That was incredible. He's pissed. He's fired up. Holy cow. I got a bit more news lined up, and then we'll probably get to some gaming or music. Let's see here. What do I got? And also, if you're on YouTube, go check out the rest of the stream at twitch.tv/beweird. I'm going to end this stream here. You can, of course, check the VOD out later on my channel. But yeah, we're going to continue the show over on Twitch, where the music is better. Bye!